always start off with what we don't know, we don't know. But when we do know, we got to do better.
Come on.
What we don't know, we don't know. But when we do better.
Come on.
Shout out, who told you were strong? Anybody? Who told you that you were strong? Jesus. My teachers. My mother.
My struggle.
I love that. My struggles told me that I was strong. Life experience, right? As a collective, we can even answer that question, right? As an individual, I can answer that question because I have some personal experiences. Then I can look to my fellow human beings and say, I have some similarities with certain people, and we can answer some questions when we have conversations. Be like, oh, I had that experience too, right? So who told us that we were strong is incredibly important, because we as parents don't know, one, what we don't know until we engage, and presence, not present, is important. Come on now. There we go. I always start with acknowledging two things, and two things can be true at the same time. I want you to remember that just in life in general. We are living on stolen land, indigenous people, and then some enslaved folks, stolen folks, were brought over to this country. And so I just want to go through a couple of concepts that you see here. On one hand of this image, you have, let's be clear, Black Lives Matter. We never said only Black Lives Matter. We said all lives matter, but we really want to focus on Black lives. Why? Because there's been a huge gap, right? But on the other hand, this is the same country that was built on genocide of one race and the enslavement of another race, okay? And so I always start with that perspective, because we need to understand from a perspective of who's getting what as resources. There are certain things that you can demand, right? We are living in a resource-rich state that went from the 5th largest economy in the world to now the 4th largest economy in the world. Don't nobody in California should ever tell you what we can't do and pay for, okay? So breathe with me if you need to, because some of this stuff is like heavy. And so give yourself space to understand that you have permission to breathe. And I say that because breath is life. Breath is land. It is water. Taking these deep breaths is allowing you to recognize that you're here connected not just to yourself and your experience, but everyone else that's in the room. Okay? Again, America colonized enslaved people. They weren't slaves. And the slavery that was happening in Africa, because you're going to hear some of these things, right? When people push back and be like, why do we always got to talk about slavery? Why is everything about race? Enslavement in this country was very different from slavery in Africa and around the world. From a global perspective, it was just totally different. And so I just need people to understand that what we're dealing with is a different system that put a profit on human capital. That even though 1865 happened, 1863 and then 1865, human capital is still a motivator for profit still to this day. So colonization came out of this country. Acknowledge and breathe again that we are on the Nisenan, the Maidu, the Patwin, the Wintu, the Miwok, the Miwok people. And they are still amongst us to this day. Like, think about that. My family will call me up and be like, Sonia, what's that cousin that, that used to do X, Y, and Z? Because I keep our genealogy. I keep our tree. I'm sure that there's someone in your family or in your circle that you can be like, who is that person? What did grandma do for a living? Those kind of things. And then finally, acknowledging that along with the acknowledgement that this land was stolen, we're recognizing that this country would not be what it is to this day had it not been for the free labor of the Africans that were brought here. Black bodies who built this country, fed this country for free, not by choice. Okay? So that's my acknowledgement to our ancestors. I want to also say, because I know the Roberts Family Development Center, I know Mr. Roberts personally, I know Patrice, I know some of the leaders that are here, and the information that you all are getting on a regular basis. This is a safe and brave space, in my opinion. And safe to me means that you are protected from, not exposed to danger or risk, not likely to be harmed or lost in the process.
Come on.
Brave, you need to add that to safe. Mm-hmm. Brave is important as well. Brave means that you are ready to face and endure. Mm-hmm. And we already said, I'm strong because of my what? Mm-hmm. Struggle. Mm-hmm. But in order to be strong through your struggle, you have to be brave. Mm-hmm. Okay? So in this space, feel free to be vulnerable. This is a no judgment zone. Questions are welcome. This inspires growth. Embrace the changes that might happen in you individually and collectively as a group, right? Because you don't know what you don't know until you know it, and then you can help somebody else. And then all of us know it, right? We are all in different places and stages in our development, in our experiences, so we don't want to judge somebody else for what they don't know. And you can add to this what makes it safe and brave for you. I want to play this clip. If I have sound, and I know that I do.
Is there? You might need to
pause.
Was it sound playing? It could be.
Maybe I have my sound down low. No? Yeah, maybe.
I was always taught to be strong in this world.
Can it be?
Told to never let my... That any moment I could be attacked without a moment's notice. That my skin...
Can you hear it?
Made me a target. Skin that has persevered through many trials and tribulations.
Only way
It could be through the...
it's supposed to.
Is it?
Sorry. Try this
Do you have I think it needs an audio in. You have a,
Oh God, what just happened? Oh, what did that? What would?
Come on, what we doing? Give us 1 second. Come on, that's my finger.
Yeah, high-tech tape.
Right? Okay, let's hold it.
My mama raped
So
by
it's
landlords,
there.
to my
Where
father
is it?
being
Oh,
beaten and stripped of his manhood, to my brothers and sisters being separated into jobs for this bigger system. My skin has always been under attack.
Oh, where is it?
Yet somehow we prevailed through it all. Through all the lynchings, literacy tests, new Jim Crows, war on drugs, the gentrifications, police brutalities, food desert, mass incarcerations, we survived and adapted and pushed to change because our very existence depended on it. Our very existence depends on this. This black strength. Strength that has carried us for decades, but is undermining an important aspect of our humanity and feeding in on itself. Being strong all the time took away our ability to speak about our weaknesses, our sadness, our mental illnesses. This silence is killing us. On top of that, we lack proper mental health care access and endure mistreatments by medical professionals who cannot relate to us in their practice. On top of that, we stigmatize mental illness to preserve this place of our strength, damaging ourselves and among black children observing a spike in suicide rates because they may feel that their place in heaven is way better than their place here today, because when black life isn't valued enough for professional help, adequate housing, or even breathing, life here degrades in value in comparison to life after. Black bodies, strong black souls are floating through the wind, seamlessly letting go. Strong black bodies are screaming for help, but suffering in silence and being socially and systematically being put on quiet. Black souls are strong, but we do need help when we do fall through the cracks. That is why I want you to know that you can patch things up with me. All right, we can kick it back like it was a drive-through movie in the 1970s. We can get some help from people who actually understand us, refute our standards of stigmatizing mental illness, and fight against the structures that chronically misdiagnose what this really is. Fight against the racism that brings up our mental health issues and lowers our treatment options, bringing us one step closer to seeing no other option. I want us to see that we have a way to heal this wound that has been widening ever since day one with no means of contracting. I want us to know that the seed that we sow today is the harvest we reap tomorrow. And when we finally reap, we can find peace in these moments, noticing that the danger isn't gone, but we finally have a place where it feels like it is. The grounding of black bodies.
And that was a TED Talk. Young Devontae gave a word there. And I am hoping that, because I don't see my screen. Is it advancing?
Strange how it's
That is. And that's,
if you press escape, what happens?
I don't know. Just press it.
No? What? Everything we're doing is on that screen? That's so strange to me.
Right, because it's in presentation mode.
Okay. So do you have, is this the mirror button right there? Is that it?
Is it?
Okay, screen mirror. There you go.
This one? No.
So one of these. Oh, right there, mirror. Oh, there you go. Yes?
Yes, but it ain't on the screen.
There it is.
Okay. All right. Whew. All right. Oh.
Did it go away?
No, it didn't go away.
There it is.
Oh. How is this showing?
Is it inside your PowerPoint?
It's inside the PowerPoint.
Press the space bar to go to the next.
One more time.
One more time.
Okay, that's how we gonna do it then. Because I don't see what a carrot is or anything. All right.
I think they got another sheet, right?
No.
You playing that one too? Where is your presentation?
That's what I'm trying to read.
Go back to PowerPoint. Hit it twice.
Okay, there we go. Oh.
Okay, you right there.
All right.
When Latinx immigrants face things like language
And let's go back.
barriers.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabriela Nagy. I'm a health disparities researcher and I work primarily with the Latinx community. Mental health problems are difficult for everyone. That can be because it can impair someone's functioning across different domains. For example, in their employment, in their relationships with their loved ones, or otherwise. But there are also unique challenges that Latinx individuals are facing, not necessarily because of their culture or anything about their identities, but more because of the environment that they're living in, which may lead to experiences like discrimination and exclusion. And this can range from being subtle microaggressions, which may be sort of ambiguous words or even exchanges that people might have, all the way to very blatantly discriminatory actions. There can also be other instances like being mistaken for somebody else, being talked over, being excluded from certain services or conversations. It could be sort of like death by 1,000 paper cuts, in that the day in and day out of having those experiences can really wear in an individual's well-being. For children, for example, it can be really challenging to learn a language more quickly, but then be asked to be an interpreter for one's whole family. At the adolescent stage, there may be challenges with developing your identity. You may be experiencing some pressure from your family to maintain those traditional roots, while at the same time getting pressure from your friends to adopt more mainstream American values and traditions. When Latinx immigrants face things like language barriers, that really makes it hard for them to navigate complex systems, whether they be the educational system or the health system. And so what it means is that they may not be getting the care that they need or the services that they need that can support their adaptation to this country. A common story that I've heard is coming to the United States to provide for your family, and getting here and having to find any kind of job, but that it may not actually pay you the minimum wage or even afford you vacation time. And that kind of a job may be really physically demanding. It also pulls you away from spending time with your children, the very reason why you chose to make this journey to the United States. That can give rise to things like stress and depression and anxiety. And this really becomes a larger issue, taking into account the fact that they may not have enough access to providers who are culturally and linguistically available to give them healthcare that they need. Latinx individuals, whether they are immigrants or not, may still experience discrimination in the workplace or in healthcare settings, or even just socially walking down the street. What can happen is that the most vulnerable members of the Latinx community, for example, low-income individuals or undocumented individuals, are pushed to the margins. They are quite resilient and have to overcome a lot of those challenges, but can you just imagine what it might be like if they didn't have those barriers in the first place?
And those are just two examples, right, of marginalized, vulnerable communities that we know are in our country. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this because it's too much, but when I'm in front of crowds of people who don't look like you and I, sometimes your resume has to speak a little bit louder when you are introducing yourself to a group of people, because oftentimes folks who come from marginalized groups have to prove who they are in their work. Mm-hmm. And so, long story short, I'm an Oakland chick born in 1970 during the times of the Black Panther Party. I saw Black images all over my household, even Black Jesus, so I believe that was true. I went to school 7 years old. My mother says was my first form of protest, and I refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance because of the last line of the Pledge of Allegiance that says liberty and justice for all. Mm-hmm. And since that time, since 1978, I have never said the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, with all of that said, we transplanted to Sacramento. I'm a graduate of Luther Burbank High School. Hey, Titans. I was accepted into colleges like but not limited Stanford, Berkeley, Brown. I settled on, and not settled because it was always in my DNA that I would attend Spelman College, because from the time I can say college in the third grade, my mother said, that's where you're going. She said that because, remember I said I keep the genealogy of my family? My great-great-great-grandfather helped found Spelman in the basement of his church. Pastor Reverend Quarles, in the basement of Friendship Baptist Church, helped the women who started Spelman. And so my mother didn't get an opportunity to attend, and she said, I be dang. She didn't say dang, but you know what I mean. One of my babies is going to attend on behalf of me. I am a wife of 25 plus years. My motherhood journey, so I'm not new to this, I'm true to this. I'm not just an educator, but I have lived experiences as a mother, walking through and walking into classrooms and saying, you are marginalizing my baby. You are not providing them with the resources that they need to succeed. So my womb has given 6 births to this world. When I married my husband, I inherited 4 bonus children. When their mother died, she asked me to please watch out for her 3 other children that are not part of our nuclear circle, but are part of our extended family. And I said yes. And my 2 of my bonus children have grandchildren. They can't call me grandma because we want to keep Deborah's name alive. I pay homage to Deborah, right? And I just think that I still look too young to be a grandma. I'm just saying. I've taught for over 20 years, and I've been doing this educational consulting for about 15 years. Long story short, I was a whistleblower, Sac City Unified School District. My principal was stealing money from my program. I blew the whistle, and it led to a lot of things. You too radical. You too outspoken. We don't want to do that, right? So things and topics that we're talking about today, back in 2009, was still hard to talk about. It led to me being diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. I had a friend who pulled me aside. She wasn't just a friend. She was one of my high school teachers, and I was her boss at the time. And she said, Sonia, what I need you to do is play the white girl's game. And no offense to anyone. She said, but when white folks get sick of something, they go to their doctor. When black folks get sick, we go to mama and grandma and auntie and them and just complain, and we live with the stress. My doctor diagnosed me with depression, took me off work for 9 months. That allowed me time to, heal and focus, but it also allowed me time to just fight them. And if you know anything about these school districts, they are big giants. And to fight them takes an army sometimes. So now I am the owner of Ascribe Educational Consulting, and we do things like this because it's important. But we also go in, as Mr. Robert said, into school districts, and we have conversations about what race and equity really look like. Okay? I do this work in honor of the little black girl that I used to be. And so for every little black girl that's coming up, we do this work. But that just doesn't mean it has to be a little black girl, any brown girl, any marginalized girl, any poor girl, any foster girl, and not just girl, any person who's on the margins of the margins, right? But when I seen this picture, I was like, they look like they could have been us in the 70s, right? Running out on the playground, I call us 3 the hard way. So my mother there, 3 the hard way, she grew up in the projects of Chicago. At the age 19, migrated to California. She was determined. She said, my kids will not grow up in the projects. They will not know what poverty is because I'm going to make it fun. And we're going to do whatever we got to do to make sure that all of their needs are met. So she married, divorced very quickly, single parent household. Saturday mornings, what you do on Saturday mornings? Clean the house and play music. Then you watch Soul Train. Then you might catch a Bruce Lee movie. Right? We played the record player. We played VCR tapes. Eventually, cassettes. Right? I can remember every Friday night when that long set of good music would come on and you would hit press record because you can then put it on your Walkman. Yes. I didn't know how poor we were until I went to college, but I knew this. My life, I was provided for. And so poverty didn't even come into existence in my lexicon, in my DNA, and in me internalizing where I came from because she made everything rich. Rich. Right? This is how poor we were. We didn't have a car. We roller skated everywhere. So I could still skate, roll, bounce. But I didn't know. I just was like, we went on our roller skates to go to the grocery store? Okay, bet. I'll carry 2 bags here, carry 2 bags here, mama carry 4 bags. We just gonna get it done. Right? I say, give you this background because everybody in here might be at a different place. And as we're at a different place in our life, we want to make sure that we are giving and being present for. She is my biggest advocate to this day. She's one of my employees. So we 3 the hard way. My sister's an ex-gang member. When she got to Sacramento, California, we was just 3 average little black girls from Oakland and her from Chicago. And we was like, Sacramento got gangs? We got to be in a gang to live in this neighborhood? I was like, I wish I would make me be in a gang. My sister, on the other hand, was a little bit younger and a little bit more vulnerable. And this is like 3 minutes. Maybe.
Feeling vulnerable, imperfect, and afraid is human. It's when we lose our capacity to hold space for these struggles that we become dangerous. And it seemed to me, that's one way to describe what is happening in our culture and our political life. We have no space to be honest about that, to be vulnerable, to be imperfect and afraid together. And it's become dangerous.
No, we don't, on a micro level as individuals, we're not our best selves in fear, and collectively we're certainly not our best selves when we're in fear. I'm thinking we've grown weary of that. I think we're sick of being afraid. And I think there's a growing silent majority of people who are really kind of thinking at a very basic human level, I don't want to spend my days like this. I don't want to spend every ounce of energy I have ducking and weaving. Mm-hmm. I don't know where we'll go next, but I really believe with every fiber of my professional and personal self that we won't move forward without some honest conversations about who we are when we're in fear and what we're capable of doing to each other when we're afraid.
Right. It's not just that the things that go wrong for us are part of our wholeness, right? As you described, the vulnerability is what keeps us in. But also that what goes wrong for us is part of our gift to the world. It's what enables us to connect and be compassionate. And I mean, that's a lovely way to think about, the hard, possibly excruciating upside of the fact that so many of us are struggling and suffering right now.
I agree 100%. I think it points to maybe one of the deepest paradoxes about vulnerability, which is when I meet you, vulnerability is the very first thing I try to find in you. And it's the very last thing I want to show you in me. Because it's the glue that holds connection together. It's all about our common humanity. Mm-hmm. And when we own our stories and we share our stories with one another and we see ourselves reflected back in the stories of people in our lives, we know we're not alone. And to me, that's the heart of wholeheartedness. It's the center of spirituality. To me, that's the nature of connection. To be able to see myself and hear myself and learn more about myself in the stories you tell about your experiences.
And so that is one of my favorite authors and educators around vulnerability, shame, and just fear. Her name is Brené Brown. That's Brene Brown. Again, Brene Brown. She has lots of TED Talks, lots of videos, and books that are available on this topic. I shared that about fear and vulnerability because, truth be told, a lot of our educators are fearful of students, what parents might think, what communities might think. We all have that in common. And so if we can break that thing down and make a connection with an educator around that, it's important. So I always say breathe after Brené because she can, make you feel a certain kind of way and be like, you want me to touch that place where I'm scared? Yeah, we ain't opening up that box. That box is ugly. I got it shoved underneath something, the bed, in the closet, high up, so no one can get it. So I say breathe because we have to own what we feel, but imagine what our babies are feeling because they are watching. Okay? What I kind of want, and I'm just going to skip through that slide because we know we're going to cover some heavy stuff. For 400 years, there's been slavery in this country, 100 years of Jim Crow, 75 years of miseducation, 60 years of public lynching, countless hours of negative media propaganda, and still, and they say we only 60 years out of lynching. George Floyd was lynched. We call a thing. If words are powerful, and we know definitions of words, and we have shared language and values around concepts, We don't have to sugarcoat. And so that's when Dara said, you know, she might say something that's going, okay, all right. I want us to be aware of just the maturation of where our babies are growing. And specifically for Black, brown, poor babies, their growth happens a little bit earlier than their counterparts, right? And so that's called adultification, that children don't get to be children. They have more responsibilities that they probably shouldn't have. When I met my husband, my 15-year-old oldest bonus child at the time was cooking, cleaning, and watching her younger siblings. Because he was a single father. He had custody of his children, and that was her responsibility. And I came, I said, no, she's 16, you need to be having fun. Where's the next dance at your school? You're going to prom. What game is happening? What things are you interested in as far as extracurricular activities? How are we going to prepare you for college? Is college something that you want for yourself? You're not going to be stuck in this house cleaning and watching after your children, these children that you didn't have. Okay? I'm just saying. So, at birth, babies begin to look equally at all faces. At 3 months, babies look more at faces to match races of their caregivers. So they're looking for commonalities at 3 months. Children as young as 2 years use race as a reason to now determine people's behaviors. They can hear language and dialects and accents. They can't talk, right? But they're internalizing things. By 30 months, most children use race to choose their playmates. And all of these are, this is data. These are research that are in each of these boxes. So this is nothing that I'm just pulling out of the air. This is research of children, generation after generation. Expressions of racial prejudice often peak between the ages of 4 and 5. Let that sit with you. Children as young as 4 and 5 are recognizing that they are being treated differently, or that children amongst them are being treated differently. Hence, when I get the question, every time I open my book and people say, at 7 you decided not to play the Pledge of Allegiance. How could that be at age 7? Well, between the ages of 4 and 5, children are beginning to recognize differences in the way people are treated. So it's no wonder, at least for me, that I was 7 in it. You know, I was adultified. I had responsibilities growing up in a single parent household. I was a latchkey kid. I wore my key around my neck with a green piece of yarn that was tucked in. You don't show that string to nobody. You get on that bus, you go straight home, you make that phone call to mama who's working in San Francisco, and you bet not have that school call me up to that school that for anything that's going to make me be embarrassed. Period. That's a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of a 4 and 5-year-old. By 5, Black and Latinx children in research settings show no preference towards their own group compared to other groups. By kindergarten, children show many of the same racial attitudes as the parents or the adults in their lives. So if at home they saying, don't hang with Jaquan, they're going to go to school and not hang with Jaquan. Because they're going to say, my daddy said not to hang with you because your name is Jaquan. Or as all of my children, Xavier, Elijah, Malik, Ahmad, Idris, and Omega. Now, Ahmad is a senior in high school right now, 17. Every year, no matter what adult has in an educational setting, I am always told he is the most well-mannered, pleasant, but I can tell that from the adults in the room. But I can tell you his experience coming home was, that kid wouldn't play with me. Okay? So this is the way our children are growing. And I got the opportunity to speak on the stage with Blair Imani a few years ago at the Black Women's March here in Sacramento, and she said if black children are old enough to experience racism, then white children are old enough to learn about it. Okay? It is all of our responsibilities to make sure that that happens. I'm going to quickly just go through this. There's generational trauma that is happening every day in households all across this country. It is it's happening here and then here. Here and then here. Generational trauma, that means that I carry the trauma of Big Mama and them, who I didn't even know. I carry her trauma. Because epigenetically, and that's a big word, and I'm not I'm not one of them, right? But for some reason, my DNA has been changed and altered to compensate for the fact that their struggle was their struggle. Because again, remember what made us strong? Our struggle. Oftentimes we are told that we are working from a deficit and that there are achievement gaps, and I say receivement gaps, and I don't know why it's advancing when I didn't tell it to advance. Receivement gaps and opportunity zones. These are buzzwords that you need to pay attention to. Because again, I said when I opened up that we live in a very resource-rich country, specifically the state of California, the 4th largest economy in the world. There's no reason that we should have an education problem. There's no reason we should have an unhoused problem. There's no reason that we should have a medical health care problem. I digress. Deficit, right? We are teaching principles and resources. We need help. What are the support tools, guided assistance? And the money is there. We just have to ask for it. I sit on the board with Sac City Unified School District's African American Achievement because there are some gaps that are huge and we need to get them closed. And so I ask, what are the resources that you're aware of? Just think about that. That's a mental question. Think about that. What are the resources that you're aware of that this district can make sure that your babies get the best education? Having these kind of conversations is a resource, right? Having a family engagement office in and of itself is a resource. Give it a second. I know what the next slide was. So as Daryl alluded to, I wrote my first book earlier this year, Monsters and Aliens. It is a 5-part series that I anticipate every February bringing out, fingers crossed, because a lot of work and time goes into these kind of things, but a new iteration, different topic, but all around equity. So the first book is Monsters and Aliens, The Voice You Wish They Heard. It is based on 7-year-old Sonia because I wish that someone would have stood up for me for that entire month that Miss Bill you made me write on the chalkboard, the Pledge of Allegiance is the American way. And I refused, so I would practice my cursive. I got a good penmanship. I would practice long division. I was in a GATE program, so I was deemed, smart. But they didn't know what to do with a little smart black girl because not only was she smart, she was smart mouth. Right. And I said, I ain't doing it. So here's an example of an advocate because that's what my mother was. My mother's biggest fear was that the slightest infraction would get her daughters removed from this school. That her hard work of getting us enrolled into Woodrow Wilson would be for nothing. Wilson was quite a distance from our neighborhood school, but Mama wanted us to get a better education with better books in the elementary stages of life. She wanted us to be able to compete with kids of all races along with this opportunity. Mama remarked, I have groomed them and provided them with the wisdom beyond their years. Just know that they would excel in whatever setting they were in. My experiences were separate but not equal. Remember, she grew up in Chicago, a little different. And I wanted them to have a running start for a better education. However, I was willing to stand my ground and explain that since I pay city and county taxes, that my children deserve to attend any school in this district. And she was not backing down on those beliefs. Mama was the real MVP, my hero, the one who always came to the rescue. And even though there was this fear that something bad might happen, She was ready and willing to fight at any cost. And I just followed her lead. I was watching. Your babies are watching. Mama had convinced herself that the educational system was so rigged that it had to be extremely intentional, that she had to be extremely intentional about the way she raised my sister and I. She understood there were stereotypes about being a single mother and didn't want to be the reason our opportunities were limited either. Mama wasn't about to be anyone's charity case. Mama just wanted her girls to be given a fair chance, and since fair was very subjective, being given the opportunity to thrive was the utmost importance to her. And since Wilson was in our neighborhood school, she knew that any implication and penalty would be high if something went wrong. We had lots of conversations every morning about go to school and represent me well. When I drop my boys off at school, we have an affirmation. And that affirmation simply is, I am not mediocre. Now, Ahmad, that I just told you about, 17 years old now, when he was in kindergarten, 5 years old, bless his heart, he couldn't pronounce mediocre. He said, he would get out the car and say, I am not meat and okra. So we tease him to this day about meat and okra being his favorite food. So when I say it's dinner time and they say what you want for, his older brothers at least, what you want for dinner, Ahmad wants meat and okra, right? But I had to, that was our affirmation. So I taught them the word mediocre and said, we are not average. You do your best. Your best is not your brother's best. Your best is not my best. They try to say, Mommy, Grandma showed us all of your report cards when you were in middle and high school and stuff. And Ahmad in particular, I'm going to beat her. He's competitive. I'm going to beat her 3.89 GPA. I'm going to get into more colleges than she. I'm going to get more scholarship money than she. And he's on his way to becoming Dr. Ahmad Lee. He has said he wants to be a doctor since he was in kindergarten and couldn't pronounce mediocre. And that's what we are laying as the foundation. So all of those things, these are the conversations that you have with your babies at home. What are the things that you're interested in on a regular basis? What's your favorite subject? What's the subject that you feel most comfortable in? Those are questions that we get in the car. Omega, I need you not to tell me that school was good today, because I don't know what good looked like. My good is different from your good, and I'm gonna need you to give me a little bit more descriptors. Right? And so you got to open those questions up just a little bit more so that they can give you more details. Are you having any problems with anyone on your campus? Adult or child? I want to know. I overheard Idris, and Idris is 12, Omega is 9. I overheard Idris the other day say to his younger brother, I want you to let me know if that boy give you a problem again. I said, I'm the biggest cheerleader. I'm the biggest advocate. I'm the biggest. Why you didn't tell me, Omega? Every day you get in the car. Because he said, because I know how you go show up at the school.
That part.
But he has people in his corner that he can rely on to give him hopefully good advice. My 12-year-old Idris is my spitball of fire. He got suspended last week. Transparent. We have to be transparent as parents. Mine ain't perfect. Damn, ain't none perfect. Far. And they all different. But Idris is a spitfire. Idris called his teacher bald-headed. That was the first infraction this school year. He's in the 7th grade. This guy is, he don't have no hair, but thank you, sir. You're welcome. He called him bald-headed. He might have added a descriptor or two, but the next infraction was they were having a fire drill, and he wasn't going because he wasn't finished with his work. Now, I can appreciate your due diligence to want to complete your work, but it was a fire drill, so I'm going to need you to do what the teachers tell you to do and move your butt on out of class. If it's a real fire, mama don't want to come and have to identify bombs.
Right.
Get your butt up. So he was sent out that time. This third time, lunch happens. Third time, yes. What month are we in? November. So you count that up. On average, that's one a month. And if he was living in Rita Price's household, somebody might have gone to school with a little bit of bruise behind. Something. Third infraction, playing basketball on the court, and somebody called his mama something. I'm gonna get you. You don't get to call my mama something you don't know, mama. But again, because we say at home, be prideful about who we are as individuals, my rule is, don't put your hands on nobody first. Right? We have to have these parameters and conversations in our households when we send our children out, because somebody might confuse their behavior as aggressive. So I want you to close your eyes for a moment and think about the words that I say. A world where the next generation of young people won't have to deal with or heal from racialized trauma. What does it feel like, smell like, look like? What does that world look like? Remember for yourself in your mind as your eyes are closed, that first time you were traumatized. Hold on to that. Did you have someone that you can trust to help you through that situation? If you did, when did you lose that trust? If you didn't, how did it change the way that you behaved with people? Just hold on to that. We live in a country, and you can open your eyes. We live in a country where we've been told that children should be seen and not heard. And I am of the opinion that children should be seen and heard equally. So again, these little girls, right? Every breath we take equals more breaths for them. I believe that. So I ask this question all the time during my trainings and workshops and talks. Imagine a world where the next generation doesn't have to heal from racialized trauma. These are very quick things to consider, outcomes and experiences, and I'm just going to take one in each of these, and what I will do is I will share some of these slides, the most important ones that have lots of data on it, with Mr. Roberts, and he can share it out with you all. But outcomes and experiences, what disproportionate achievement outcomes exist for certain groups of students? For parents and families, do parents and families feel welcome when they come on the school campus? I'm going to take that a step further, because we do have and live in a society where there is a very real functioning school to prison pipeline, and there's been data and research that says it's not school to prison, it's from the cradle to prison. Okay? If a parent has a background where they have been incarcerated, can they come on that school campus? They've served their time and their debt to society. When do we forgive them and allow them to be an asset to their children's lives? When it comes from a school standpoint, how are adults intentionally using interactions to meet the needs of young people? So all of this conversation is leading to the mitigation of childhood trauma, because we want to imagine that future where they don't have to worry about and heal from racialized trauma. Things to take note of that I just think are important: unintentional, biased, descriptive language. My ball of spitfire, Idris Nehemiah Lewis, when he was in the 3rd grade, one of his teachers described him. She called me up. She said, Idris was playing on the playground with some other boys and he was being aggressive. And I said, hold on. He was playing with other boys. Were all of them being aggressive? I know Idris is a sweetheart. He playing with everybody else. They all doing the same thing. Because I know my children. And if we're present, we begin to pick up on the different behaviors and traits that they have. Idris is the most giving and kindest, but he's a chatterbox. He's smart mouth like his mama. He's giving it back to me just the same way I gave it to mine. Right? I'm probably getting it tenfold. That's what my mama told me I was going to get. Right? He is that one that tries me every day. Idris, I said, get up and go do this. I'm coming, mama. No, you're not, because your legs ain't moving. Right. Idris, get off the video game. Idris, I have your cell phone now for a month. Because that third offense, right? So I didn't finish telling you. He goes, he's playing the basketball on the basketball court. The boy said something about his mama. After school, he walked up to the boy and hit the boy in his head. He thought, oh, it's after school. Nobody's going to see him. It's in front of the whole school. All the kids is getting out. Are you kidding me, son? Right. Are you kidding me? The boy, thank God. He's a little skinny little boy. I don't know if he can handle himself. These are not street kids. I tell them all the time, you ain't got that kind of cred. I'm going to need you to not think that you bad. Right. I grew up on the streets of Oakland. My sister and I had to fight our way in the neighborhood. No. Y'all some cupcakes. I'm going to need y'all to act accordingly. But he walked up to this kid and he hit him. That's inappropriate on so many levels. And nobody hit you first. Because that's the rule. Right? Don't let just anybody diagnose your babies, right? Question everything. That's what it say is what I mean. Question everything. Especially how your school deals with and celebrates diversity and the environment of affirming your children. Introductory email. Here's my email every year at the beginning of the school year. Miss such and such, Mr. such and such. My name is Sonia Williams-Lewis, and my children do not have to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Please don't make them. Don't urge them to stand up. It is their choice. If you ever have a problem, the best way to reach me is by text, because my email has over 10,000 emails, and I am scared to go into it. That is my introduction email to my kids' teachers. Introduce yourself. Because what they don't know, they don't know. Because if your kid shows up and is halfway decent, they might fly below the radar. And then when that bad thing happens or that bad grade begins to accumulate, then the teacher is calling you after the fact. And then if you like me, you're like, why you didn't call me the first time that the grade was bad? Right? So, you can see that there are lots of questions that you can ask. Taking note. And I say that because you are the advocate. Parents are the most underused, undervalued, underrated resource within any school district. Parents. We all come from a different walk of life. We have different professions, different religions, different cultures, different languages. We could add something to the educational landscape of any school. When you are having conversations, it should be about parent-teacher conferences in particular, but it should be about the child, the classroom, and the future. How are they doing now? What are the protocols and procedures within this classroom? Expectations. And then finally, what's the future like? Curriculum. What should be the benchmarks that they are hitting? And I am almost done. I think we got like a couple more slides. Warning for some parents, Black, brown, poor, and other, there's distrust, and it is legitimate, right? One of the biggest stereotypical pet peeves that I hate about Black women, and I had to tell this woman on the bus when I was 13, because again, I was a smart mouth. It was Miss Jenkins from the church, bless her heart, and I was on the AC Transit in Oakland, and I probably was cussing and saying something that I shouldn't have been saying. However, Mom, she went back to my daddy, who was a pastor. Yeah. And said, your baby was on the bus and she was cutting up. And I was. and I got in trouble. But the lady that I always saw her, once I recognized who she was, the lady she was always sitting on the bus was, just happened to be a white woman. And that woman said, they're so loud. And at 13 in my mind, I was like, what does they're so loud mean? So loud because you don't hear me? So loud that I got to exaggerate my head movement so that you can see me? So loud that I got to talk with my hands to accentuate what I'm trying to say? That loud? Because you erase us, you other us, you silence us, you change the narrative, all of the things. And so I am a proud, loud black woman. And so that's why Omega didn't come home and say, Mommy, there's a kid who might be potentially bullying me at school because he know how I'm going to show up. We're going to find out why y'all not paying attention on the playground when my baby is getting bullied. But all babies, right? Discrimination, intentional or unintentional. We need to be paying attention to that. Don't let the stereotypes prevent you from your right to show up. Okay? They might be scared of you. They just have to get over it. I saw a meme, a video I posted on my Instagram page just the other day, and it said it was a white woman, and she said, you know, we are sometimes scared, but it's not a fear that I'm afraid of my physical well-being. It's a fear that maybe I'm inadequate. And I was like, I don't want anyone in my presence to ever feel inadequate. That is not the intention, I think, of people who have stereotypes about them, if that makes sense, right? What else? Call out any cultural miseducation. Like my kids, we don't say Thanksgiving, we say Thanksgiving. I'm just saying, I told you, he warned y'all, right? So we don't say Thanksgiving, we say Thanksgiving because the truth of the matter is it was taken from, right? And yet, what are the classroom protocols and procedures? Because that's super important. Here are some examples of other stereotypes. All blonde women are dumb. Like, I bought a blonde wig the other day. I was trying to be my most fabulous self. All redheads are prostitutes. I mean, these are stereotypes that people live with. And then they act accordingly or not. Right? I want to play this last video and then we are done. I promise you. It's very short, but this just recently happened. And I want you to look at this term, ethnocentrism. Examples, go back to Africa, go back to Mexico. So that's the example. That's the prelude screen that you see before you see this teacher. And my question to you after you see this is, if this were your child, what would you do?
Deep down in my heart, I'm ethnocentric, which means I think my race is the superior one.
He says, deep down in my heart, I am ethnocentric, and white people are superior.
White is better than all.
This is the teacher.
I think everybody thinks that, they're just not honest.
Hey, I'm not racist.
He
I like
and
all types of colors.
Did I say I don't like people?
People only think
Wait,
that.
so you said you are what? You are racist? You saying you're like, you're
I think
racist?
everybody's a racist at that level.
No, you said you are racist.
I did.
he said, I am a racist. But I believe all people are racist. So I want to give this teacher the benefit of the doubt. Because what I think that this teacher is trying to express is a reality that we live in a society that has a dominant culture, that has power and control, and has for a lot of years. And where he's recognizing the power structure. I think that he explained it wrong. And I pray that, because I see the good in people, I try to at least. I pray that in his heart, he's not saying, I'm a racist and I don't like you as an individual. He's saying, we all are racist because of the race construct. That's what I heard. He has recently, this happened a couple of days ago, he has recently been fired with the Austin, Texas Unified School District, and they are offering counseling and things to those students. So if your child came home with a video like that, what is your response? As their advocate, what is your response? Calling the district.
My son has a teacher, he's in 6th grade, and his teacher is white, and he's been teaching for like 30 plus years. And a lot of the things that he says his teacher does, I think it's funny, because I think that his teacher has just been teaching for so long that over the time, he probably has gotten fed up with stuff that he's dealt with from kids. So he has a microphone in the classroom, and he talks on the microphone. And like I said, maybe, and then now these new kids, the young, they act kind of crazy, and sometimes they act like they don't listen, like they don't hear you. And maybe that's why he put a microphone and a speaker, because you know, classroom mate isn't even this big.
Right.
So when my son first told me, I said, why does he need to have a microphone and a speaker just to talk to you guys? But maybe you guys are bad. Maybe you guys don't listen. I'm not just gonna look at it like he's being mean to my kid or all the kids in the classroom. He probably has good reason why he does what he does.
And that's a simple conversation. Mr. Such and Such, can we talk about your reason why? And maybe this is a trigger for your child, that a loud noise like that could be distracting to their educational process. Not just theirs, but other students in the classroom. Can we have a conversation about that? But in order to have those kind of conversations, we have to be present. We have to be engaged. We have to be available. So when I hear those kind of things, it's like red flags, red alert alarms, it's all going off like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How is it impacting the educational process? I appreciate that. Anyone else? I always talk about Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde is one of my favorite authors and activists in the world. May she rest. There's a common thing that people quote her as saying, you can't use the master's tools to destroy the master's house. So this system, we know is broken. And if you take the master's tools that built it to try to destroy it, you're going to end up failing. But she went a little bit deeper. And this red part, so let me just read it. For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring genuine change. Okay, we get that part? Here it is. We're breaking it down, but if we're using the same techniques, it's going to get re-erected the same way. Well, what she went on further to say is, and this fact is only threatening to those women who are still defined, who still define the master's house as their only source of support. And she's saying it from a woman's perspective because, in her opinion and in a lot of opinions, is women are more vulnerable than men. If I were to give you two demographics and I say who's considered the stronger, or who has the more benefits or privilege, right? We can make those kind of differentiate. So, as she continues, racism and homophobia are real conditions of all of our lives in this place and time. That's a lot, because it forces us to think of new ways to handle these systems that we've been dealing with for forever. And so that's what I want to end us with. The next slide is just questions, if you have any. Those of you, I realize we are at time. If you need to leave, I completely understand. One of the African proverbs that I live by is that many hands make for light work. Everybody put your hands up. If I were throwing a ball around the room, we all could potentially swat it. But if I say, you sir, tell me your name. Trayshawn Weatherspoon. I love that you gave it all to me. If only his hands were up and I threw the ball over here, he's going to miss it. Or he's going to try to dive for it. Many hands, raise our hands, make for light work. That's my presentation to you all. Any questions?
Fist pump and sit on them. Questions?
My daddy a preacher, and when he used to preach, he'd be like, he'd do one of these numbers. I'd be like, I feel the same way when If you want to get in contact with me, here are ways to do this. I always say love, light, and liberation, because when the most marginalized in our community are liberated, everyone has an opportunity for liberation.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
We will send you information for Patrice.